welcome back to another Fantasy Grounds Fridays. This is stream number 221. I am joined by Free League Publishing. We've got Thomas Harnenstam from Free League. And you are the CEO of Free League, right?
Yeah, I'm one of the game designers here, and I try to fill the role as a CEO of sorts as well. Yeah, that's entirely correct.
Yeah, so you want to just give a brief introduction to yourself, and then one for Free League itself.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Thomas. Been doing tabletop RPGs for a very long time. It's kind of been following me my entire life, pretty much, even though I've been taking some time off from it as well now and then. But in the last 10, 15 years, it's been a very big part of my life. That Free League started out as just a small thing that a couple of friends did, writing freelance stuff for other companies, and then it kind of grew from there. And we started making games. We're based in Sweden, Stockholm, so we started making games here locally in Swedish. But then pretty soon we decided to try and do something for the larger international market. And it kind of grew from there. So yeah, we're just a bit over 10 years ago now that really got started. And yeah, it's been quite the journey.
Yeah. Well, first I want to say thank you so much for coming on to onto the show to talk to us and all that. We're going to be mostly talking about Alien today. Yep. I know that we've got a couple of other shows lined up with some other people from Free League to talk about some of your other products.
Sure. Yeah.
But I guess let's just. First I want to say, because usually we do these live and we have questions from chat. I just want to let chat know this is another pre-recorded one. Since Thomas is in Sweden, the time difference is very, very crazy for the two of us. So it's like 4 p.m. for him and it's 8 a.m. for me. So, but yeah, so Alien, how did that come about? Because, Alien's one of my favorite franchises, even though I will admit I haven't gotten a chance to play the game yet, but it just seems like such a interesting choice for a TTRPG.
Yeah, I mean, we had this is over 4 years ago now, we had that first idea. Like, we started discussing what would be kind of the dream franchises. We had done some TTRPGs based on licenses before, but they were, considered comparatively small licenses. And we were thinking whether we should, if we were going to go for one of the bigger ones, what would be kind of the dream IPs. And we had a very short list at the end of that kind of brainstorm, and Alien was on that very short list. But back then it was basically just an idea, and we all felt that there was actually an RPG based on Aliens, and on the second film that came out in the 80s, that was very much focused on playing just the Colonial Marines, and it had a very different focus. It was not really a horror game; it was more of an action game.
Yeah,
it was
like
also
the movie.
Exactly, and it was also over 30 years old by then. So we figured it was, if we were going to do something. Alien could be a really cool setting. We were all fans of that kind of gritty, hard sci-fi type stuff, but we felt that Alien would be super cool to turn into an RPG. So, and not that long after, I got in touch with someone called Joe LaFavi. He's runs an agency in the US where he kind of brokers these kinds of agreements for license. He works in licensing and so on. And he had heard of us mostly, I think, due to a previous game that we had done called Tales from the Loop, which also did
right there,
quite
right
well.
Behind you.
It's over there. Yeah, exactly. So that we had done that, and that kind of caught his eye, and that kind of led to us speaking, and we discussed, what we could do, and it turned out that there was actually an opening to pitch for an Alien RPG at that time. So that we did, and only after a couple of months later, we actually had an agreement in place to do that. So it was all happened fairly quickly, and then of course it was a lot of work to get to actually complete the game. But that's kind of how the whole thing started out.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like I said, Alien, it's an interesting choice for an RPG, but I think it makes sense for a horror game. Alien is one of the best horror movies of all time, after all, at least in my opinion.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess Like I said, I haven't gotten the chance to play it, but I am hoping I'm going to try and run a bunch of horror games for Halloween. So, sell me on Alien. What makes Alien, the TTRPG, different from other horror RPGs?
Yeah, I mean, what we tried to do, I mean, basically with all our games, but Alien very much so, is to kind of design the game to enhance the story and the setting and the
Hmm.
style and tone and mood of the films and of the world. So that we kind of designed the game to really bring out that horror element and also in storytelling, but also in the mechanics. And that meant doing some rules that don't really get in the way, but instead kind of push the tension to the forefront. And I think we also have constructed a new type of scenario that we call a cinematic scenario, which plays out almost like an alien film. Is that you have pre-generated characters and a
Hmm.
story, and they're all kind of, instead of making your own character that are completely independent from the adventure you're playing, here they're kind of intertwined. The story and the characters are really one. And that means you can
Interesting.
play, and they're usually, most characters won't actually survive till the end of the adventure. I mean, hopefully maybe one or two will, but it's kind of part of the setup of the films and also these
Hmm.
adventures, that you will probably lose some people along the way. You can play with that and have fun with that. And really, when you play one of these cinematic scenarios, it's really like playing through an alien film, and you kind of get that whole experience. And it's always fun to see, the stories told by people that play these scenarios. It's like, oh, I died in this horrible, horrible way, and it's telling these kind of stories about how they succumb to some horrible xenomorph at some point. So I mean, that's really what the game is about. You can play it more long form campaign play, but I think what has that kind of one
Hmm.
shot cinematic style of play is really something we designed very
Yeah.
carefully to fit in with Alien.
Well, that sounds perfect. I'm gonna be checking that out right after we're done with this because, like I said, I was looking for some games to play some horror stuff in. And I gotta say, I
Yeah,
like that kind of cinematic approach that you talked about. I feel like a lot of TTRPGs, even horror ones, kind of stray a little bit too far in some cases into gamifying it. And once you do that, players end up where they don't want to die. Even though it's a horror
yeah,
game, they're like, no, I don't want my character to die.
yeah.
Uh,
Exactly. I mean,
yeah.
and here it's part of the dying is kind of part of the fun in a game like this, and it's kind
Hmm.
of part of. We also have something called personal agendas. That means that each character has their own kind of secret agenda, so they might not have exactly the same goals in the scenarios or the other players, and
Hmm.
that kind of creates that nice kind of paranoia around the table where you don't really know who's actually, there could be a secret android, there could be who's
Yeah.
actually, the company agent, pretending not to be, or I mean, there is that kind of element too that also kind of works well with how the films were
Yeah.
made and presented.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds very like you've captured the essence of the Alien films with that.
Yeah.
Like, I guess spoilers for anyone that hasn't seen Alien. I think the best twist in Alien is that one of the people is a robot, is an android.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
So it's really cool
definitely. I
that
mean
you've.
that yeah, so we kind of picked up on that. So there's definitely, that in some of the scenarios there is the
Mhm.
option to have that secret android. And in one of them specifically, I won't go into details because, spoilers, but still there's also a choice which character is the secret android. It might not even be decided beforehand by the scenario. So you can actually kind of have fun with that and,
Oh,
play it
okay.
one time and then that character was the secret android and the next time it's someone else. So yeah, that's kind of it creates a fun uncertainty and paranoia when playing the game.
Hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned that you're a game designer and CEO. So did you do a design work on Alien?
Yeah, I mean, I did most of the kind of rules and
Hmm.
and system stuff. We have other writers doing more of the setting and
Yeah.
who are very, know the lore and the universe better than I do, even though I'm a fan. I'm not, that I don't have that
Yeah.
encyclopedic expertise of every, and I can't claim to have that. But I'm a huge Alien fan without having that
Hmm.
super, super. expertise on the worlds, but so my role was mostly game design, rules design, and just getting the whole thing together. So my focus was a lot on getting these structures in place and the rules in place, and we have something called we developed for this game specifically that we call stress dice. I mean, dice are part of pretty much every TTRPG. That's kind of that comes with the territory. But here you have a special kind of dice that you kind of add. You pile them up, and you get more and more as the tension of the scenario grows, and your character gets more stress. You get more of these yellow dice with a face hugger on them, so and they are actually good for you. You can actually use those dice to be more powerful and more successful with what you try to do. But it's almost like a game of blackjack or something like that. If you get too many of these stress dice and roll a face hugger, then you'll probably go into a wild panic or something. So it's kind of that kind of building of tension that comes quite concrete by having this pile of stress dice in your hand or at the table. So that's kind of one part of the mechanics that we developed for the game.
Yeah, that's a really cool. That's a cool mechanic. And I think a cool. I guess spin on the more traditional, like, I guess to use like Call of Cthulhu, the more traditional quote unquote sanity that a lot of horror games, not just COC use. But that's a really cool way of kind of
kind of a different way of handling that kind of thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I guess how was designing a game like Alien different from other stuff you've done in the past? Maybe some more traditional style RPGs, because it sounds like Alien is quite different in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, it is. I think it's kind of a different, and I think that's kind of an interesting eye opener, because I think, I mean, to a large extent, of course, TTRPGs are, for many people, it's kind of synonymous to Dungeons and Dragons. Mm-hmm. I mean, that might, for a lot of people, that's perhaps even the only game they might have played or even know about.
Yeah.
So it's fun to see the reactions of people who play Alien after having perhaps mostly played D&D, because both are fun, but there's a very different kind of fun. It's much more kind of unpredictable, chaotic, and it has that, it brings out other things. It's not focused on tactic as much. It's much more about the mood and the tension and that usually can be a bit of an eye opener, I think, if you've played other types of games, that this is also a way to play TTRPGs, and that's a lot of fun. And for us, it was also different, even though I think our design philosophy has always been to kind of bring out the theme of the specific game and what makes that setting and that very thing special and different, and try to bring that out in the rules. But Alien's definitely one of the ones that we did that the most.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm really, really excited to finally, this is one, I have a huge list of RPGs that I've been meaning to check out, and I start every time I do one of these streams, it just moves another one right to the top, because every time I hear like designers or writers on them talk about it, it makes me want to try them out more. So I'm going to be checking this out for Halloween. So I guess to piggyback off of that statement, what would you say is a really good place to start with Alien for someone who's maybe they've seen it either at the shelf of their game store, they've seen it online, they've seen it on the Fantasy Grounds store. What would you say is a good starting point?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best starting point is probably whether it's in digital form on Fantasy Grounds or in physical form. But we have this here. This is like the starter set, and it has kind of everything that you kind of need. It actually has all of the rules and stuff, and here are the stress dice that I mentioned.
Oh, those are really cool.
And and some other dice. And here is like personal agendas. You get those on cards. You can kind of have that, some other things. But then there's also a complete scenario that I mentioned, these cinematic scenarios. There's a complete one of those included. It's called Chariot of the Gods, and so it has with characters and everything. You kind of have everything you need, the rules and a complete scenario and everything in this box, and it's also available. I mean, you could also start with even if you play digitally, that's basically the same content is available as well. Here is the really big,
that's really nice.
There's a big star map, so you get.
Oh,
like,
see, I'm a huge you've sold me on buying that starter set because I'm a huge sucker for maps. And whenever I buy like a box set and it doesn't come with like some nice maps, I'm always a little disappointed.
Right. Yeah. No, this is a big map, and with a lot of. I mean, so it's. I kind of enjoy in RPGs some like fiddly bits like that. Have something physical like maps and dice and cards and because it kind of just makes the whole thing more fun and a bit more tactile, and so I kind of like that part of it. So that's kind of really what we tried to do with this starter set. Then there are more scenarios. You have Heart of Darkness is a new one coming out. It's another cinematic. It's coming out like in a couple of weeks.
Oh.
And Destroyer Worlds is one that came out about a year ago. I think. Yeah, and there's more stuff, but I think the best place to start is definitely the starter set.
Yeah, so I think we'll start with, can you tell me just a little bit, give me a little synopsis of Chariot of the Gods?
Yeah, it's a scenario that really kicks off. I mean, one of the fun things about role-playing Alien is that you can kind of use what you know because it's such an iconic series of films and an iconic franchise. So you can kind of have fun with that when you play, at the table. You can kind of use the similar situations or something that you kind of can riff off the movies. And I think Chariot of the Gods kind of starts out in a very familiar way. It kind of starts out very much like the first Alien film. The characters are crew members on a space freight ship, just hauling some gas containers from one end of space to the other. And they get, there is some distress call going on and something happens that kind of reroutes them from their original course. And that's obviously very, 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 familiar with the original film. But so that gets everyone in, which is kind of fun because then when you start out, you can everyone's like, oh yeah, I know this. I saw this. I kind of can relate. And of course, the characters are different and different things will happen, but it's kind of familiar. The kind of situation you're in.
Yeah.
And that kind of, you start there, but then it kind of, stuff happens that you will not expect if you have seen the films. So we make, different kinds of twists. Not the same ones as in the original film, obviously, but something else is going to happen that will probably surprise you quite a bit. So it starts off in a familiar place if you know your Alien, but then it takes different turns as the scenario unwinds, which is kind of the way the whole thing is planned. And usually when this is played, not all characters will survive. Or you can play if your character dies, you can usually have an NPC. There are some NPCs around that you can kind of take over and play them for the last bit if you want to. Still want to be part of the game, but yeah. So that's kind of how it plays out. You can play it in a single session, but it's probably going to be a big long session. So it usually takes there are 3 acts. It's like act 1, 2, and 3, and different things will happen in each act. And usually when we play it, typically it's like 1 session per act. So that's like 3 sessions or something. I think would be kind of the sweet spot for how long it takes to play.
That's really cool. I like that it riffs on such a classic setup. Like you mentioned, everyone knows the setup of Alien.
Yeah, definitely. That's the kind of what makes it a lot of fun. I mean, and in the other scenarios, they do something similar. It's not exactly the same. Like the second one, Destroyer Worlds, that has a focus on Colonial Marines. So that has kind of ties in more with the second film, obviously. So it has some familiarity there, but it's also, again, not exactly, you won't do the exact same thing, not at all, but it has some familiar elements that you can kind of use to kind of help you when role playing. It really helps when you have that kind of familiarity with the world that you will have from having seen these films. You can kind of spin, riff on that and use what you know and what you've seen in the films and bring that into the game.
Yeah. What can you tell me about that new one that you said is coming out in?
Oh yeah, this one.
Yeah,
Heart of
I
Darkness.
love
It's
hearing
coming.
about new stuff.
Yeah, this is coming. Yeah, real soon, in October. And it's also another cinematic scenario. So it has a full. It's also a full-sized scenario with new characters, and it has like so story
Yeah.
cards, personal agendas, all of that. Also a big map. It's
Perfect.
we kind of have three different what we call campaign frameworks for the game. Kind of what type of characters you actually play, and the three that we kind of pinpoint are space truckers. Basically, that's what from the first film, just crew members on a spaceship, doing salvage runs or freight runs or something. And the first, the Chariot of the Gods that I mentioned, in that one, you're playing space truckers. That's kind of the thing. The second framework that we have that we kind of pinpoint in the game is Colonial Marines. That kind of ties in with the second film and the Destroyer World scenario where you're playing Marines. So that's more military focused and all of that. And then the third one and the third campaign framework is explorers or colonists, and that's where we go with the third one, the Heart of Darkness. So that's there you play a crew on an exploration ship that kind of goes out into uncharted space and looking for new planets or to colonize and things like that. So that's really the focus, and that kind of going back to the films, that's a bit more like Alien Covenant or something like that. It's kind of where you have that colonization ship going out into new reaches of space. So that's kind of the third. So we have one cinematic scenario for each of these frameworks, kind of types of characters that you play in the game.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like I'm really loving all of the inspiration drawn from classic the Alien films.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really really great to hear. I'm gonna ask. I've got a couple of they're kind of softball questions, but they're questions that everyone loves, and it is: do you have a favorite TTRPG to play?
It's kind of hard to say since since we have made quite a few of them. So
Yeah.
it kind of feels like, it feels bad to mention one of those, I guess.
You can,
But,
if you really enjoy playing one of them, you can totally drop one of those.
no, I mean, I mean, definitely Alien is definitely on the top of that. And I mean, on that, list of games that I enjoy very much. We also recently, we're working now on it's kind of, in for many related, a game based on Blade Runner. So that's,
Oh,
he developed that, and it's coming out. It's not out yet. It's coming later this year, and I really enjoyed playing that as well. But also, of course, played so many games from other publishers, so it's hard to pick just one. That's kind of the main one for me.
yeah. Honestly, I'm kind of glad you brought up the Blade Runner. I saw every stream we have one or two people coming in. When is Blade Runner coming to Fantasy Grounds? And we don't have an answer on that yet, but I know that they're just clamoring. It's not even out yet.
No, it's not out yet. So it's definitely I mean, hopefully it should be on Fantasy Grounds also pretty soon. I mean, usually we try to release on in print and virtual tabletops and so on if we can around the same time. We'll see if we can actually manage to get this out on Fantasy Grounds when it's released in physical form, but hopefully not too far after.
Yeah, I know that we have a lot of people that are really clamoring for Blade Runner, and I agree. I'm a big fan of cyberpunk as well. So as a genre, so a Blade Runner RPG sounds great. I guess it's not really what the topic was today, but what can you tell me? Because I don't know very much about the Blade Runner RPG. What can you share with us about that since we've brought it up?
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of people are making, there is this idea. I'm not, not saying whether it's true or not, but that it's kind of the same universe, Alien and Blade Runner. It's not, I mean, not officially, it's not.
Yeah.
They're two completely different, for us, they're two completely separate licenses. They're not, connected. But since the films were both made, of course, by the same director, and there are some similarity in tone and so on. There is definitely this idea within, the fandom that they are connected, which is fun to play around with. I mean, we will not be making any kind of crossover things, but of course, if you want to create that yourself at your table, I know there already been a lot of discussions on this online, that can I make it, combine these games into one, and of course, if you want to, you can. And the game system, the mechanics are not identical, but they are similar enough that, making conversions is not impossible, even though it'll require a bit of work. I think the main difference, where Alien is very much a horror game, and that's also in the mechanics, kind of bringing out the tension and the building of tension and the horror. Blade Runner is we have framed that as it's based on investigations and casework, so it's much more of a mystery solving game in a sense, where you go to locations, interrogate witnesses, and look for clues and try to piece together a case. And then there's also, of course, these kind of moral, existential issues that always come into Blade Runner, that kind of intersect with the actual investigation and the casework. But the tone is a bit different. There's some similarities in that it's moody and it's dark and it's, but there's definitely a difference in that Blade Runner is not really a horror game. It's much more of a contemplative investigation game with some bursts of action in between. But yeah, I think they're both a lot of fun, and they're similar also in the sense that we really try to bring out the essence of what we feel is the essence of these franchises and films, and try to kind of recreate that in the RPG.
All right. Yeah, that's really, I'm excited for that one too. Like I said, fan of cyberpunk as a genre, so Blade Runner's right up there for me. So yeah, I was one of those people that when I heard there's a Blade Runner RPG, I was like, well, I hope that we get that because that'll be a lot of fun. Especially to mix it with Alien, like you just suggested, like you just soft suggested.
Exactly. I cannot officially,
Yeah, we don't endorse that you do that, but if you do.
I mean, that's kind of fun. That's part of the fun with the tabletop role playing, is that you can do whatever you want at your table, and you just any crazy crossover that you feel is fun. So, of course, go ahead, do that.
Yeah, it's your table. You could take rules or settings from anywhere you want at your own table.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm known to do that. I take 5e's inspiration, or the 5e's disadvantage system. I take that to almost anything that's D20 based, because I just think it's a fun way to do bonuses. But yeah,
definitely.
So when designing, do you have any sources that you find yourself going back to for inspiration? Designing RPGs is just something very fascinating to me. People just come up with rules, and it's always the mindset behind creating those always fascinates me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun process, and it's something I guess I've been doing since forever, as far back as I can remember, at least pretty much as far back as playing RPGs. I think kind of designing, I mean, a lot of playing RPGs is also designing stories, and it kind of blends together. Designing and playing RPGs are hard to keep apart. It's almost the same thing. And I think for us, of course, it always builds on what's been done before. I think that's any kind of artistic, whatever design work. It kind of builds on something, draws inspirations from various sources, and also builds on what you have done before. And so that's basically when we design something new, it's like, oh, we did this and that game that really worked, and that we could do something similar but a bit different. We could bring in that element from that game, and of course inspirations from other games done by others. And it's kind of, and then when you start putting all of this together and it starts to kind of take a life on its own, that's when you realize what needs to be new and unique for this particular game. It usually can start as a bunch of a very vague idea, and then you kind of pick references of things that you kind of, it's a bit like that but not quite, and then a little bit like that, but then And when you pass that point and you really get into the actual design work, that's when you kind of create what's more unique and special, because then you kind of have to bring it into something coherent that is new and different and unique, even though it builds on all of these previous sources, of course.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess first, before we move on to any more, how are we doing on time? Because I know that you've got another interview right after this.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of have to be wrap up in 5 minutes,
All
so it's
right.
kind of running a bit late. Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. Then uh, I will first thank you once again for taking the time to come and talk to us. And
Sure.
so I believe, I think it's next week, but I know that the next Free League game we're talking about, I believe, is Symborum, which I hope I'm pronouncing
Right.
right. Um,
Yeah, pretty close. Symbarum. Yeah, yeah.
can you just tell me just a little bit, just a little sneak peek for anyone watching about what
Sure.
Symborum is?
Yeah, Symbaroum is our dark fantasy game. It's been around for quite a while now, so it
Mm-hmm.
has a massive support of modules. We're working on a large, it's a big epic campaign in 6 parts, and I know
Oh.
that Matthias, who I think will be the one on the
Mm-hmm.
show next time, is now wrapping up writing the 6th and final part of this massive campaign. So it's and there's lots of more stuff for it, but it's a very evocative setting
Mm-hmm.
of a kind of a dark forest and different, a hidden fallen empire that kind of with ruins that you can discover underneath that, overgrown with these huge trees, and there is, dark magic and different factions wanting to get at this hidden power. And so it's a very well developed, very cool setting that is also with some great artwork. The artist is who did most of the work for Symbaroum is also the one who did the alien work. So
Mm.
he's our in-house artist who did great work on both of those
Yeah.
games. So yeah, if you want that kind of epic dark fantasy feel, I think Symbaroum is a really cool game to check out.
Cool. Thank you. And Thomas, thank you for uh, coming out and talking with us. Where can we find you and Free League around the internet?
Yeah, I mean, we have the website. Just search for freeleaguepublishing.com is the kind of the in the Free League
Mhm.
Publishing in one word. And then, of course, you can find Free League on your various social media as well.
Cool, cool. Then I'm just going to plug our other shows around here, and then we'll let you go. So make sure you come back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern time for Josh's map and image creation stream. He does a lot of great artwork. So yeah, if you've got time, then it's great. We call him the Bob Ross of RPG maps because he's just so calming to listen to. And then this show will be back next Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern time as normal. Yeah, we've got some fun stuff also planned for the month of October for Halloween. Because I'm a big October Halloween fan. So love all the scary stuff. But yeah, other than that, thank you, Thomas, for coming and talking to
Thank
us.
you.
And we will see you next time. Bye.